Hey everyone, welcome to Outlaws, the High Times series that dives into the real stories behind cannabis culture's original renegades. I'm Holly, and today I'm meeting with Nya Hessler, a second generation grower who grew up off grid in Humboldt County while the war on weed raged overhead. Nya's story isn't about breaking laws, it's about staying true to your values when the system tries to break you. From his family's back to the land roots to his fight for sustainable cultivation today, he's carried that outlaw spirit the whole way through. Let's get into it. Hey, Nya, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's good to see you again.
You too, for sure.
How's your day going in Humboldt?
Oh, it's going good. We're kind of just getting our. We got a little rain a couple weeks ago, but we're just kind of getting like our real rain right now, and so a little stressed out. We'll see how the next couple days go.
You're deep in harvest, I'm guessing.
Just kind of starting. Yeah, a lot of our like depths and stuff we kind of got through already, but like the outdoors and yeah, and there's some depths we just pulled the covers off of too, just to run them the one last time without covers. So yeah,
Okay, so
we'll
yeah,
see.
rain matters.
Yep,
Rain matters big time right now.
yep.
Well, I'm super excited to chat with you today. You and I crossed paths a couple years ago, and I got to learn a little bit about your story and how you grew up and how you entered the cannabis industry. And I can't even really say it like that. It's not like you entered the cannabis industry. It's like you were a legacy born into a cannabis industry in a sense. Like your family has sort of created a cannabis industry as what I want to call them, like the founders of Humboldt in a way. But please tell me a little bit about where you're from, a little bit about your family, your childhood. I want to start with your origin story.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually, my mom and dad moved to Humboldt County. They kind of moved around for a while. They were from the East Coast, and they moved around for a little while, and then they moved here to Humboldt County and moved as far as you could get out from anybody. But pretty much they went to the end of the road and then walked another 8 miles past that into the middle of nowhere and had me. And my mom got pregnant, and then my mom was actually a nurse before she'd moved from New York out here, and she said, "I'm one thing I'm not doing is like there was a little town Garberville with the most scariest hospital you've ever seen, and it was like she was like, I am not having a kid here at this hospital. I'm going back with my old comrades I used to work with. I'm gonna have you on the East Coast." So, and it being in December and the snow and everything, they took me back there. So, but technically wasn't born in Humboldt County. I was born in New York, but then
Okay.
I think I was 3 months old and they brought me back out here. Yep, never left.
Okay.
Been at the same place ever since. And yeah,
And they found this land just looking to like, was the original intention to homestead? Like, were they looking for something permanent, temporary? Like, how did they even land on this property past walking out as, you know?
they actually passed through here, and I think that they passed through here like I think in the fall, and it was just so pretty here. But they went up to Portland, Oregon, and worked up there for a while, and they ran into the drizzle thing in the weather, and they were just like, it was so nice, down south in Northern California. So they
Um,
came back here, and then they really just looked for a place that had a lot of water, and it was way out in the middle of nowhere. And my dad came from a military family, and he was the youngest of six brothers, and he was the only one. And actually, my grandma was a subcontractor for the military too, so it was a whole
Ooh,
family affair. And she
yeah.
said, "I want one son that's just not in the military." But he had six brothers that were all in the military. They were all law enforcement in New York City, and he was like what you would call the black sheep. But my
Yeah.
grandma didn't want him in the military. She's like, I want one son that might survive and not get killed in war. So he kind of, his mom didn't care he left, but his brothers were just super pissed. He bailed out and came to the West Coast. And it's like, they, and the way that, I mean, they still think this way that California is going to break off and fall into the ocean here before long, and that don't go there. So it's a,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that's
Okay. So,
how I ended up in Humboldt. That was it.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So your parents find this piece of property or land that they acquire in the early 70s
Yep.
and build a home, start a family. Like this is like about as off grid as you can get, especially in the 70s. So,
Oh yeah.
what was it like growing up that way?
It was really tough. It just everything was an uphill battle, and in the early days, like I don't even think law enforcement knew about cannabis too much, but my dad had, I think it was in 1969 or 68 when he came out here. He was being wild down in, I think it was LA area, and he got caught with a couple of joints and they gave him life in prison. And that was kind of like, that's why he headed north. That's when they were like, we're
Yeah,
headed
no.
north. But he got life in prison, and then having a big military family, he spent 6 months in Chino State Prison, and then his family pulled strings and attorneys, and they got him out. But he always.
Life for two joints? That's obscene in any decade. Like, that's wild.
Oh, it was super super crazy, and we actually, the state gives out all these grants and stuff for, if you've been convicted, you can open a
Yeah.
dispensary. You get all these, help from the state, and we never got any of that because they could never find his records. And just about 3 months ago, they finally found him. They had changed the penal code from then till, so it just didn't exist, but they actually found his records. And so now I qualify as a son of a person that had been, convicted of marijuana felony. So hopefully,
Well,
maybe if they ever, now the state's broke, they got no money to help us either.
yeah.
Oh, perfect timing. Like,
Yeah, of course. Like, damn it, when could we have not figured this out like a couple decades ago? That's crazy. I had no idea that even existed.
that's where I think he kind of even became more of a rebel, though. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm a rebel, but I'm going to go even farther as being a rebel, and just, he wasn't violent or anything. It was just, he just didn't want to
Yeah.
be in the system.
Well, that's what happens. You get busted and you make a choice. That's like a crossroads of like, okay, I'm scared straight. I'm going to go get a bank job and, never smoke weed again. Or, okay, cool, I'm going to go move into the Humboldt Hills now and live completely off grid and start growing cannabis. But I also I feel like it wasn't necessarily like your family was like your parents like, yeah, hell yeah, we want to become like cannabis drug lords. They're just like, okay, we want to grow some pot on our farm next to our food and vegetables. Like this is like a holistic lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it wasn't even grown for sales in the beginning. It
Yeah.
was just grown to give a little away, and it was a cool plant,
Right.
and people liked it. And I mean, back then, I think we were probably between probably 2 to 6% THC, so it wasn't
Right.
not like
Yeah.
it wasn't like dabs or something. It was like, mellows them out. It's like having a good cup of tea or something probably back in the day. Just
Yeah,
you go.
exactly.
There was money wasn't actually involved for quite a while. It was like there was no people weren't really coming to bust. It just didn't even exist. But then there was still the stigma though. I think from like in the 50s and stuff too. The whole the what was that one marijuana kills brain dead. All that.
Yeah. The whole reefer madness of
Reefer
everything.
madness. Yeah, so there was still that, but I think there was a long gap that there was just nothing though too. It was like so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, this is like, we're in the back to the land era. Like people, your parents are hippies. Let's just call it for what it is. These are
Okay.
these are the hippiest hippies we're talking about here. Your
Yeah.
your folks were living in a teepee while they built their home by hand. Like people don't do that anymore. Like that's not.
Yeah, my dad didn't come from that. He came, like I said, he was a career. He went to, he played lacrosse in college. He was educated, but he just didn't agree with it. So he just bailed out
Yeah,
on the wall. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's that kind of lifestyle and that feeling and that freedom and connection to nature that called me to Humboldt when I graduated college and was like, okay, got a college degree. I'm gonna go work on a pot farm. This feels good. Like I'm gonna go. But, I wanted that like lifestyle, that feeling. No fast food anywhere nearby. No crazy loud bright energy of city. I wanted that too. Like I get that desire, and that's
It's,
what I
it's,
always.
it's the pure silence that I think people don't don't get enough of, or sometimes don't even
Mhm.
know it exists. It's like
Yeah.
when you go for a walk 10 miles out in the middle of nowhere, no cars, no phones, no nothing, and just kind of get to know yourself. And I think a lot of people have never done that, not once. It's like, have you
Oh
ever
no.
been where it's quiet and just, listen to nature and just kind of
Yeah.
just really find yourself, and you don't have to be on something to do that. I actually find that the best time is when you're totally sober. It's like when you take
Oh
it
yeah.
easy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's almost like a skill and a practice, I think, too, that you have to have, because sometimes sitting with yourself alone in silence without distraction is really, really uncomfortable
For
for a
some
lot of
people.
people. For
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
especially when you live in an overstimulated world, that can be a hard thing to adjust to. Like that type of connection with yourself and nature it's such powerful medicine, and it can have a growth period of discomfort around it.
Yeah, I just noticed, I do, I'll be out on a farm by myself for days, sometimes weeks, and then I'll be down in LA the next week, and it's like it's an adjustment both ways. You just got to sit back and you're like, okay. But then you see people in that down there, and you're like, man, have you ever gone to the other side and really checked it out? It's like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
people were like, oh, I went to the beach. It's like, yeah, with like 14,000 other people
Yeah.
4 foot away from you. It's like, have you ever driven up the road somewhere to a beach and hiked in where it's just quiet or just,
Right. Yeah. Private little coastline.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole new world.
Yeah, some people are afraid of it or don't even know that part of life exists. So I feel fortunate to know that it does, and I feel comfortable doing that too.
And that's what, I think is so unique too about the way you grew up, because I know you went to school. There was a point when you did like leave home and you were going to school, right?
Yeah,
Like you weren't homeschooled. Okay. So what was that like for you? Like, did it feel like the kids that you went to school with lived very different lives from your family, or were there other folks kind of homesteading in the same way?
there was other folks doing the same thing by then. By the time I think I was 6 when I went to school, 6 or 7. My mom homeschooled me till the second grade, and I went off to public school, and there was other kids there, and it was like you kind of looked around the room, and it was like we had, the sheriff's kids, the CHP's kids, and you knew you just had to keep your mouth shut and don't ruffle any feathers, don't pick a bone with anybody, and just kind of mind your own business. But also you had to blend in too. It was a hard situation, but you there was other kids, and it was like our school bus stop, actually we had to drive to the school bus stop, and our school bus stop was the end of the road, of the main road. So it was like every kid that got on that bus pretty much from that area, it was like the first ones were all families of parents are growing weed, and then as we got closer to town, it was like, yep, nope, it's like everything's quiet on the bus now, nobody says nothing. But for the first hour, because our school bus ride was about an hour and a half, so the first hour
My
was it was just me and the other kids like me, we'd just be talking about, oh, it's harvest time, or it's we got planted.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty funny the way it worked. But then it was like then we all just like kind of like didn't acknowledge each other, and we just all right, like we don't want to look like a pack or a clan.
Right.
So it was like then we all intermingled with everybody else as they filtered
Yeah.
off. So it was always kind of was funny to me how it worked. It was like, yep, we're out off the hill now, and it's like we're with the city kids.
It's like school bus cannabis club for kids. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. Like
And it
you're all
was
living.
interesting, like the kids we went to school with, even the ones, that had parents that were in law enforcement and stuff, they knew what we did, but they didn't, it was our generation. I don't think it was that big of a deal to them. But their parents, on the other hand, it was a big deal to. But the kids
Yeah.
never, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to tell on you, or, I know what you do. It was like, it was just the onset kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was this like a conversation at home where your parents were almost like, okay, so we don't really talk about this in public? Like, was that something that, or was it just known? Like,
It
like
was.
what was your perception of marijuana when you were a kid? Like,
I didn't think it was bad. I didn't really know much about it. Like, I honestly, in my first years, I didn't socialize with people that didn't like blunt. Kind of, maybe they didn't do it, but they smoked, or their mom smoked, or it was just like something that they did. It didn't come across to me as like something bad. But then I realized, like, all of a sudden, law enforcement's starting to come, and you're on the opposite side of law enforcement. And then it was like, okay, so it was never even told to me, don't say anything. It was just like, you just knew, don't say anything. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically, I felt like I was on the run since I was probably 5 years old, or just hiding and on the run. So it was
Did that ever feel like, was that ever like dangerous or scary as a kid? Or was it just like, oh, this is just normal?
Yeah, no, it was scary. It was traumatizing as a kid. I know people talk about like the helicopters and, law enforcement, but before there was even helicopters, you knew the cops were coming into your area because they would actually send in a fixed wing little airplane. And you'd hear that airplane just start going, you knew that was the calling to get what you got or get out of the house and go hide in the woods. And it was like and for a while, like my dad and other guys would go, they'd have chainsaws stashed along the road, so they would go drop trees, because they weren't using helicopters then, so they would just slow down the progress. They'd run, drop trees down in the road, and then go back and harvest and hang the weed out in the hills, and yeah, so it was and I think that the adults almost thrived on it, kind of. There was a lot of them that were in my neighborhood was mostly all ex-Vietnam vets too. So it was like they were strong people. They'd seen this before, It was like they'd been down this road before of, planes and people coming at you with guns. And, these were some pretty strong and traumatized people too, that were just,
Right.
they weren't going to, it wasn't going to be an easy thing for the law enforcement, so but it was scary watching as a kid because you thought everybody was going to battle, you're like, oh, it could go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Like, like, I feel like I'd be afraid for my parents. Like, I don't want my parents to get in trouble. Like, I don't want anything to happen to my house or my sense of safety here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was almost, I think it was more traumatizing because the parents that were out there grew up somewhere else and they didn't have that. They just they knew about law enforcement. They had seen what happens, and also they saw the good side of law enforcement, In Humboldt County, I never saw that. It was like I never seen them help anybody. It was just they were there to bust you. That was it. But the parents, hadn't grown up that way. They were like, oh no, it's like the beat cop there. He keeps the hobos away or this or that. Or people robbing. It was like, I don't know. They rob from us and they're ready to us at any time, and they're
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's kind of the other way around, actually.
Yeah, and I
Did
remember.
did law enforcement ever show up at your family home?
Oh yeah,
Like, cops ever come knocking on the door with reasonable cause, or like, how do?
Yeah, there was a couple incidences. Like I remember the first time that they brought helicopters out. They brought out this big double-propped Huey helicopter, and I was out in probably a 4-acre field, and they brought this giant helicopter out, and they kind of swung around it was just a vegetable garden, and I was out there. There was just a couple plants. I mean, we were maybe growing 20 pounds maybe a year, like nothing. And that helicopter, I remember it just spinning around and looking at the guy, and they were probably 200 to 300 feet from me. The prop wash was hitting me so hard, and I looked up, and the guy had a 50 cal machine gun, and he just had it pointed right at me, and then he was just putting up his hand, and I think he was giving me the finger, and they just spun around me, and I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and they just held me in the middle of that field with the 50 cal machine gun just going circles around me in this Huey helicopter, And they had shot and killed this guy, Duringer, I think his name was, just previous to that too. They just went some redneck said this guy was cooking crank up in the hills or LSD or something. He was making drugs in the hills. It was all so. This redneck guy that hunted there just wanted the guy out of it. And it was the guy that was there owned the property, so they rolled up there on him and shot him in the back, killed him. So that was like my memory. Like that's what I was just always like. You could just get shot at any time.
Yeah, bad things can happen here.
Yeah. So it was traumatizing. That happened to me a couple of times where I'd gotten cornered by a helicopter, with a gun put on me, and you just eventually you just start running for your life. That's what you do. You ran for your life.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Like, what? I mean, they're not gonna like launch out of a helicopter and swoop up a little kid and take you away, would they? But like, how do you know that? Or
you don't know. It's just
you don't know.
Yeah, no,
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was, so definitely a lot of PTSD from growing up, for sure. And I 100% respect law enforcement too. It's not like I've never been in trouble for nothing. It's like, I think times have changed, and then I just kept my head down and didn't respect them. But as I got older, I was like, okay, 99.9% of them are, and now the stigma's gone, and they're my age people now too. They don't care anymore. It's just like they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. A totally different energy for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, a different way to grow up. It's a super
Yeah,
different way to grow up.
for sure. It was tough. I always had my surfing was like I started young in motocross too, and that was always like an escape. It was like, all right, the motorcycle track we go to, no, there's nobody grows there. It's like they were safe
Yeah.
places. You could go to the beach, and it was a safe place. So was it?
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that because that does seem kind of like a defining thing in your life when you really started spending a lot of time with those two activities. And I do remember you telling me that was kind of like, okay, this gets me off the ranch a little bit away from the farm, but also you were good. You were a really good surfer, and these were things you were really passionate about.
Yeah, I think like my dad just wanted me to work all the time. He was a workaholic. He's like, work all the time, work all the time. He hated me surfing or riding motocross, and luckily we had a neighbor move in like the mid 80s, kind of just like I hadn't had a driver's license yet. I think I was about 12. He moved in and he was from San Diego and he grew up motocross and surfing and he was a pilot and he came from a pretty well off family too. And he was a rebel, but he was also he was just a great guy, and he took me under his wing and started taking me up and down the whole West Coast, racing motocross and getting me surfboards. And then my best friend too lived next door to him too. So he took the both of us under his wing and we just basically showed us a different way. And I would say that was the man that changed the way that like there was people that weren't engaged in that and they were like more the hippie culture, and they followed in the footsteps of their parents and just kind of started smoking at 9 years old, 8 years old, and just kind of hung out around the bong and just did that all the way. And then there was a little group of us that were just totally different. We were just like, all right, we're making money, we're traveling, we're going to races. Like it was just a way to make money to get out of the situation you were in, and really see the world too. Some of these other kids they're still out there. They've never left. It's like we had like this drive to go do something. It was,
It's almost like that was like your form of teenage rebellion. Like whereas, my teenage rebellion growing up in a Christian home in the Midwest was the smoking weed and the doing, trying to be involved in that. But there's no way that would have been like rebellion in your home. Your parents were like, yeah, here's my lighter, like go ahead and light up. So for you, it was like almost finding a completely different lifestyle and aligning with
if I had
kids
grown up in the
and
Midwest, I'm sure I would have smoked just to escape
yeah.
the situation right there. I think it's just a rebellious thing. And now my
Yeah.
dad was like, now he says, "Oh, that saved your life," because a lot of my friends didn't do that. Most of them are gone. It's like they didn't make it that far. And it's like, yeah, it saved my life, but I know I had a million near-death experiences too. But I would have rather drowned than dying behind some drug in some room. It's like
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
doing what I love to do at least. So that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's an interesting detour. And then you also you had this brief stint modeling, which I think is like so interesting. Like I can picture the book that you're on the cover of, like young, blue-eyed, blonde-haired surfer boy. Like it's so California iconic. How
Yeah.
did this little segue in your life happen?
That was just one day I was ditching school because there was a fork in the road, and it was like we could drive out our road, and if you went right, you went to the beach. If you went left, you went to the school. And it was like if the surf was good, like probably about 10th grade, I was just always like, all right, the surf's good. And then I'd be like, I'm going to school, and I'd hit that fork in the road, and it was like, I'm going right, I'm going to the beach. So I was actually ditching school one day. When that happened, I was ditching school, and these photographers showed up at the beach, and they just said they wanted to take pictures for a book cover, and it was actually Kodak and a couple other big companies put together this thing. It's called A Day in the Life of California. They've done like A Day in the Life of China. They have this whole series of these books, and then as soon as I got that, then I started getting calls from these agencies down in San Francisco, and I went down there and tried to do that for a little while, and then I realized that world was really messed up then in the 80s. It was like, ooh, this is exactly the way the hippies are living on the hills with the coke and the alcohol, and it was like, but it was like really a shady scene for sure. So
Yeah, especially being that young and like being a part of that world could have also set you on like a totally different track that maybe wouldn't have gone well either.
yeah, I was 15 and 16, and it was just not. It was like, yeah, this is like, it just wasn't for me. I knew it pretty much. Yeah, I went down and did quite a few different interviews, tryouts for different things. It's like, and also there was a lot of just, it was just dead end, a lot of it to me. It's like, oh, you go try out and do this, and then you don't get picked. You try out and do this, you don't get picked. And it's like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is what it is. It just seemed like, okay, this is not, not fun.
So, do you remember the first time you smoked weed? Or
Uh,
around when it would have been?
yeah, I think I was about 14, maybe. And I took a couple puffs and I was like, ooh, don't like that. You know, I just did not like the way it was a really intense, heavy feeling, and I didn't like that at all. I like to be pretty much full speed ahead. You know, it was like it just kind of felt like it bogged me down. I did not like that feeling at all. It was,
Okay.
and I probably started drinking around that age too, and I was like, ooh, a little tequila is way funner than getting stoned. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I
I
can
need
get
to
that
link
would
this upper here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that was yeah. I didn't try it again. I think till I was about 18, and then I was like, I think I actually ate a brownie when I was 18 too, and I was like, ooh, I do not like that either. You know, so it's like that was just
Yeah, talk about heavy or like
heavy
swimming. Yeah.
down. Yeah, I was like, no. And just being able, I don't know, and also always worried about getting in trouble for smoking too. Like alcohol is pretty accepted, but not smoking.
Oddly. Yeah, I know.
I'm sure that there was an influence of just having done it or that for so long that, just never appealed to me really.
So you told me once about this one police officer that was kind of like a recurring figure in your life for a period of time.
Yeah.
How did this start? What were you up to that put a target on your back by this person, and how did this unfold?
I think I was pretty rebellious, and I think that I'd outran him a couple times in a car, and he knew
Okay.
he had my number then. And actually, I outran him one time right through town, and ended up passing my mom and our neighbor while they were shopping. They saw it. It was like, and he just after that time he had it out for me, and it was like I probably got pulled over at least I'd say 30, 40 times by the same guy. And then one time he actually pulled me over after school. I had my own car, so he pulled me over alongside the road, and the kids waiting for the bus were still all loading up. He pulled me alongside the road, and he just opened up all the doors, ripped everything out of the truck, and then he made me take my shirt off and my pants off on the side of the road. And then he took my keys and threw them over the hill, and he locked my truck and threw the keys over the hill. And I was standing there, and here comes the school bus, and it was so embarrassing. I was standing in my underwear alongside the road with a locked truck with my keys. I had nothing on me. He couldn't. It was just he just he would come up to the truck and he'd be like, "All right, Nya, I'm doing it again. Here we go." And I was like, he'd always ask me, "Where's your drugs? Where's your guns? Where's your alcohol?" And I was like, "I don't have any of it. Like, I'm just a rebellious kid, but I don't have anything. Nothing. Never. I actually ended up getting a DUI by him after, and it was just time and time again. He pulled me over. He finally caught me one night after a party, and I got a DUI. And I actually tried to outrun him too that night. And I went up a dead end road, and I parked there for a while, and there was nothing, and the moon was out pretty good. And so I went to leave that road, and there was a dip in the road where there was no street lights. I was right in town, and I was creeping down this paved road with my lights off, and I'm like, okay, he's got to be gone. And I turned on my lights, and he was about 20 foot ahead of me coming up the road with his lights off too. And we were like, we almost had a head on. And that was it. It was like, it was over after that. And I think that went on for a couple of years till I was just about 18. And then I was just like, I stayed out on the hill a lot and didn't go to town for quite a while. And my dad was just like, you gotta go. find something else. You can't stay out here, you know? It's like, so I was like, all right, I'll move up to northern Humboldt. So I moved to northern Humboldt, and a couple weeks after I moved there, I went to a grocery store, and I turned around, and there was that CHP in plain clothes, and he lived like 3 blocks down from that grocery store. I was like within probably 3 or 4 blocks from him. He never recognized me though, and we were in Fortuna, which is a bigger town, and I just kind of always went the other way, you know. It's just, and yeah, never saw him again. I always remember his name though, Nicoletti.
Letty, wherever you are.
Yeah, yeah, I hope. And I wasn't the only one though. I know that there was 3 of us that got the wrath by him for sure. And a couple of my other friends had gotten DUIs and they got thrown out because of the career. Like we'd never had tickets from anybody else except for one guy, you know. So he ended up losing his job or moved him somewhere else. I think, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, this was like, he's harassing you simply because it's like he knew who your parents were and knew that you guys were growing weed, like, but had nothing, nothing he could really get you on. So he's just fucking with you repeatedly as a
That's all.
teenager.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like, that doesn't make any sense. It just is so ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, it wouldn't fly these days, you know. And
no, no.
Alderville, they always took the new recruits from LA. So they were, you know, these were people that had grown up and probably seen some pretty good violence that we'd never seen in LA, you know, and they grew up as, you know, they went to the academy. And so the first place they'd always send them, though, was Garberville, Southern Humboldt. And so they were always young, you know, young, gung ho, early 20-year-old guys that just were going to save the world, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready to bust something, someone.
Then we had the old sheriffs in town, and you'd be sitting there right in the town square drinking a beer, and they'd come out of there and make you dump it out and chew your ass because they don't want to get their asses chewed from whoever owns the business in the morning for beer cans left, you know. So they would make you get in the car and drive home. So I was like, they didn't care, you know.
Yeah, a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So it got to okay. So this gets to a point now where you've left the family farm. You know, what is the goal here? Like, you want to break out on your own? Like, how did you transition from leaving your family home? What did you do next? How did cannabis become a part of your life independently?
Yeah, you know what? I kept growing the whole time. I would just commute out to the hills, and I'd stay a couple days out there, and then I went to community college for a while too, you know, in that time period. But every year I went back. That's how I did it, you know.
Driving back and
Drove
forth.
a million miles on these back roads, just back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, hundreds of thousands of miles of 20-mile-an-hour road.
Well, yeah, nothing is close together once you start getting out into Humboldt Hills anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
when you're driving back and forth between all these little towns.
Yeah, we did that. You know, we kind of, you know, the outdoor thing started fading away. Then the greenhouses started coming in, and then it was like, oh, you can grow a greenhouse right in the plain open if they can't see in it because of probable cause. So, you know, then we rode that for quite a while. Then the indoor thing kicked in, and that was just like we drove 20 hours a day. Then, you know, it's just you're driving diesel, supplies, machine, you know, generators are running, and it was just a whole.
How were you growing indoor? Like just in like barns and like how? What were you? How did that?
We called them chicken coops, basically, is what I called them. They were chicken coops, and they were just long, big buildings that you'd build under the trees and cover with brush, and they were totally disguised. You couldn't even see them. That was
Got it. Okay.
what everybody did, or a lot of people did here for a long time. And then light deprivation came around. The indoor and the prices just kind of started to drop out in light deprivation, and then the bigger, like the 215 days came, and I was like, oh, we could put 100 plants out there next year. It's like, I think I'm gonna do 200, and so I got two 215 cards. Next thing you know, you got a book of 215 cards. You're like, well, we got 1,000 plants in the sun now. Nobody's, you know, and that was really the beginning of the green rush. Kind of like people realized it was like an indoor just went to the wayside real quick, which was a good thing too. You know,
Did it start to feel less intimidating or threatening around that time? Like, was there protection in the I always called it like the Rolodex of medical cards that I would carry, like, you know, like did that start to make it feel like, hey, this is fine. Whatever I'm doing is nobody's gonna fuck with me?
Yeah, no, there was a period that's what, like, law enforcement backed off. The legalities of it were just, you could just go do whatever you want as long as you had your 150 or 200, 215 cards that you're a care provider, you were good. Like, as long as it was
Hmm.
hard for people to even deal with just getting that together, though. Like, some people were super paranoid because they were going for it and they're like, we don't have one of those. It's like pretty easy to get, It's like,
Yeah.
you searched around. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we also had friends too from the cities that were like, oh, we got our 215 card. You want mine too? We'll trade a little bit for it. So there was a lot of that. So you had a lot that you didn't know, and then you had some in there. It was like, oh yeah, those are buddies too. So it was a, but
I loved that period of time in Oregon. I was in Oregon around that, when the medical system was really growing and expanding that way. We're like, oh yeah, 96 plants and managing the cards. I love that because I actually really liked working with the patients and the people that just legitimately were like, they're so stoked to just like come see plants, get their monthly allotment or whatever it was. I just thought that was like such a cool, fun time before we dove straight into legalization and everything sort of blew up. But
yeah,
I liked that.
I think actually at that time period, I think that there was more revenue going around for sure. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that there was like that time period, there was a lot of really bad with it, but there was a really good part of that, and it was that people grew good product. They could be in the marketplace. There was no, it was it was just a lot easier for sure. And I think that everybody benefited more from it. The only thing that didn't benefit was the environment took a big hit. It was like I think that like even now, if they would have just put it back to 215 days, but we're going to roll in on your operation, make sure you're clean, and if you're clean, you're good. There's a pat on the back. Go spend your money in town. Like please to keep us in a job. Like I think that
Yeah.
they just looked at it as like we're not getting our cut on taxes, and now they get way less. It's like you should have just let the money flow around, and the sales tax alone would generate plenty of money everywhere for everybody. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, and the money, so that's like a whole separate thing. You once told me that basically you were just like, self-sponsored for 20 years, I think is what you said to me. Like that's, like because it's not real money in
Yeah,
a way.
yeah, yeah. No, it was like people are like, well, what did you do with all that money? It's like we couldn't really buy much. Like my accountant said one time, he's like, they don't know if you're eating beans or rice or lobster tails, but as soon as you go buy a rig or something, they know. So it's like,
Right.
all
Yeah,
right, well, yeah,
you can't take that cash and go get yourself a house
no,
or
yeah,
like that's just not how that works or fund a business with that money necessarily. Really, it's yeah, it is kind of fun money. It's a hard outdoor growing season, and then the winter is kind of like, okay, cool. What are we gonna go do for a few months?
yep, yep. It was just go surf a lot, and travel and go surf, and then come back and do it again. It's the
Yeah.
amount of like you look back at those days though too, and it was like, well, we had so much more respect for the environment. It was like we didn't bring out rat poisons and all. It was like we used rat traps, but we weren't like fumigating the hillsides, and it was like you didn't just we didn't drop in dozers to just push big flats and shove all the dirt over the hill into the creek and stuff. I was like, no, we
Mm.
strategically little spots here and there, which just very blended into the environment. Now it doesn't.
Well, I'm sure a lot of that value too was instilled in you young, just growing up, you know,
Yeah,
learning how to grow food, knowing you can't destroy this land. It's sustaining you. It needs to be healthier and healthier with time so that there's the longevity to continue this lifestyle.
yeah. I think that that's like I think that I think that the people that consume weed are. I think it's one of the most hypocritical things I've ever seen. The guy will talk about how he just went to Whole Foods. He's driving a Tesla because it's of emissions, and then he rolls to his dispensary and goes, "Do you got good indoor from Glass House?" And it's like, now wait, like it really that's the part that gets me is like, how are you just not that educated, or you just don't want to know, or it's like because honestly, we should only be purchasing from self-sustainable farms that store their own rainwater catchment, use as much solar as they can. Like, those are the people that should be getting, but it's like I always tell people, I say, oh, you're going to go buy some indoor from, wherever Stizzy is. Like, do you go to like Walmart and get your fresh tomatoes from there? It's like, oh no, I go to the farmer's market. I was like, well, how come you don't do that with weed? Like, why don't you look and say, like, that farm is self-sustaining, it's small, let's sponsor it. And it's a product that's not like a fresh vegetable that you gotta go get a farmer's market to get it off the farm fresh. It's like, we dry this and we can ship it up and down the state wherever you want. It's like, it's not hard for them to get. And that part
No.
always really drives me crazy. It's just like, it's like, I'll never
That's
eat a hydroponic tomato. It's like, yeah, but you smoke hydroponic weed, like, it's, and if you like it, then more power to me. But don't say one thing is one and then the other
sure.
is another. Yeah. If
It's
you want
kind of
gold,
like
yeah.
that's the through line of the outlaw era in a sense too. It's just like it's almost just like rebellious now to continue fighting for the environment. Like when did caring about the quality of the things we consume become such a damn rebellion? But it kind of is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which
It's
is
it's I would say if you probably listen to some country music and you got a big lifted truck and you want to go in and buy some indoor and smoke it, well, I'm not against you. That's just the way you live, and you want to drink shitty cheap beer, then that's just who you are. Like, but don't act like you're saving the world with one hand and kicking the people that are trying in the other. It's like, why don't you sponsor those people then? If your rebellious movement is that way, why don't you follow through with most everything you do?
Mhm. So moving from like medical into recreational, how did you at this point, like, have you pretty much decided like cannabis is what I do? This is what I do. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Let's do it legally. Like, where was your head at? Was there like some heartbreak in how the system was changing? Were you optimistic? Like, what were you thinking and feeling at this time?
Yeah, I had been working around the state quite a bit at that time and point, and I had a friend down south. He's like, you're gonna have to go legal. You're gonna have to. And he kept saying that for about a year. He's like, you're gonna have to go legal. And I was like, really? No, we'll just keep operating the way we do with our 215 cars. He's like, no, it's not gonna be like that forever. So I think it was around like 2015, like when the whole legalization thing kind of really started to like come on the radar. My wife and I and the kids were up in Canada snowboarding, just generally because it was Canadian dollar was so down then. It was like a 50% discount to go to. People were like, man, you used to go to Canada to snowboard. It's like, yeah, we would drive up there though, and it was half the price that it was to go to Oregon to go snowboarding, and the snow was 4 times better. So it wasn't like a luxury trip. I mean, it was, but the dollar was so down there. And we were kind of talking back and forth, and just on the road thinking about it. And that was when they legalized in Canada too. We were up there that New Year's, and I was like, all right. And we were coming home, and we were just like, all right, we gotta make a choice whether we're just gonna get out of it or go into it deeper. And it's like, no, we're gonna go deeper and stick with it. So that was kind of the turning point there.
Was having a family of your own any part of that decision? Like, did you maybe not want to raise your kids around any kind of black market environment, or like, was that a part of the thought process?
Yeah, I lived in like Fortuna area, which is a conservative area in Humboldt County, and my kids, I always left them out of it. They never, they kind of like the oldest knew the long, or he didn't know the longest, and now this 16-year-old we have has known since he's been pretty much born. But then the older ones just they just went to school, lived a normal life, and I took off to work every day, and that was it. Sometimes I'd stay at work, but nothing was really ever said. They knew what I was doing, but I never talked to them about it. They never talked to me about it. They just lived, a normal childhood growing up, removed from it. I
Mm.
didn't want them to have to live with the stress. It was like I just
They
wanted.
weren't spending. They're not spending their weekends big leafing greenhouses or anything like that. Wasn't.
No, no, but there was a lot of kids at their age that were, especially where I grew up. There
Yeah.
was a ton of them but I just wanted my kids to, choose their own path.
Hmm.
I don't want to force this on you. Choose your own path. And right now, my 26-year-old, he works with us all the time, and I got a 22-year-old, and he's getting his college degree right now, and 16-year-old, I think he wants to go do something different too, because they've also seen the stress of it, and they're talking about like legacy. And I worked on some stuff with like Humboldt State, and they're like, oh, how are we going to preserve the legacy? It's like legacy's almost gone. I think there's about 2% of that left, and I told them, I said, the real legacies, they're in their 80s, they're passing away. The second generation has been highly stressed, highly worked, and we're in our 50s, and they're going away. And their kids don't want nothing to do with it. I can't think of any of my friends' kids. They've all left the area. They just don't want to be involved because it's so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shame, but the legacy is like a fairy tale now, pretty much of trying to preserve. It's like they should have thought about preserving this the first day they opened it up and been like, all right, this is how we're going to preserve it. They didn't. You don't preserve something once you ruin it, right? I mean, once it's done, what is there to preserve? Nothing, So, yeah.
It is a shame. I can absolutely see that though. It's a hard life. It's hard work. It's volatile as there's no stability. Anything could
Yeah.
happen any year. I mean, at the basics, it's farming. Farming is volatile, but it's not just farming, it's farming cannabis, which just adds this entire extra layer. That's an important point you noted that I hadn't really thought about, is that this younger generation who maybe didn't know or see or experience some of the things that you have or that I have. Yeah, why would they, if they're just looking at it from like, okay, I want to do something with my life, it's hard to look in and be like, this looks really promising. Like I still think
No, it's like, my oldest is in it.
solid.
Yeah, but we're always looking, like he's always looking, at other jobs and stuff too. So I just say it's just going to be a dying thing, and there was no preservation. That was just a scam to pull more money out of the government for universities to study it. It's like, if you guys wanted to do this, you should have did it 30 years ago, or even right when it kind of came to light in '99. It was like, okay, we got a 2-year program here. We're going to preserve this before we move forward with a lot of it too. It wouldn't have been
Yeah.
hard to pick out groups of people to be like, hey, this is legacy people here. Like, let's just see, like, study them and see if we can keep it alive. But it's such an afterthought now. I was like, oh yeah, no, you just got another $5 million to study legacy. It's like, oh great, what? And then what people think is legacy too is like, I honestly don't even consider myself legacy. It's like, this has been going on for so long. It's like, people just, like my dad always says, well, I was the first one. I was like, no, you're just the first one in the modern day of like, but this has been going on for thousands of years. It's like the Chinese had cannabis, down in Mexico, the Mexicans had cannabis. It's like, it's just, we're just another part of peace and time here. But it's such a crucial one because we're going to go from where it was small farms and, legacy farms to just, it's going to be all corporate. And then everybody doesn't get a choice. You just get what they give you. And kind of, even in the food world right now, I hear a lot of people are panicking because the corporations are basically buying up all the small farms, and they either pull them into their pool or close them down. But our food just becomes a number on Wall Street. It has nothing to do with this farmer grew this crop and he knows he's not going to do this good this year, and he's going to probably make no money. But he still has to get it to market, and he does it again the next year. These guys will just turn it off. They'll just be like, nope, let it go, done. It's like, so now our food is just basically a number. And I do see some, like in the last year or two, I see people getting concerned with that. They're like, well, what do we do when 3 people own all the food in the U.S.? And they just decide there's no money in it. You think they're going to start wasting money on it? No, they're just not going to plant this year. And then what do? We all starve, So it's a scary, instead of having a lot of little independent lanes, and it's kind of like, that's how the gas industry works too. There's big guys, but there's a lot of little guys out there still with gas wells, and that's what kind of, I think, creates the balance, but once it's all in a couple people's hands, we're along for the ride now, so that's it.
That's true.
Yeah.
I hate to think too of, I mean, on the one hand, I can't necessarily see big corporations coming and plowing down Humboldt hills to grow there. I hope to God. But that also makes me sad too, because I feel like these heritage farms hidden throughout the hills all over Highway 36 and throughout the Triangle, if it no longer becomes profitable or viable to work in the regulated market, those are just going to continue to fall off and die one by one, which from what I hear is kind of how that energy is right now. There's just less and less of these farms. So then are we going to lose the magic of the Humboldt terroir and the incredible cannabis that's able to grow in the soil in these unique environments? That's what has to be preserved. Like, it's so unique.
Yeah, no, it's I just know a bunch of farms this year. This was their last year. There's a bunch of places came on the market recently, and I was like, you fly over here, it's 1 out of 20 farms is still operating, and half of those farms should have never operated to begin with. So it's hard, but there's definitely a fine line there where they just kind of threw everybody in the same bunch and just said you're all criminals and you've all ruined the environment, and you know and it's like, no, not everybody has, It's like there's bad actors and that is what it is. But there was never any protections, and even with like within the industry, they always said, oh, we want to make it like the alcohol industry or the tobacco industry. And I was like, there ain't none of that. There's nothing. They drive right by black market scenes to come, the DCC will drive by a black market scene to come write somebody up a ticket for a trash can that was mislabeled at their business. And it's like, look at the bigger picture. It's like it was a money grab more than looking at and you could pay more money to do more destruction to the environment. It's like, the environment isn't making that money. It's just to provide more jobs for a regulator to go watch that site now, but they kind of lumped everybody in the same situation, and it's like, it wasn't the same, so, yeah, sad for sure.
It is sad. What are some of the things that you do at Amaranth Farms that are, in integrity with this entire mindset of sustainable farming and growing? Like, what does that look like for you in your work process?
Try to not disturb the environment you're in the most. Use a lot of like the level flat spaces that were already there. I have one farm that I had to do so much environmental work. It was just absolutely, I mean, it needed to be done, but nothing I had done there. It was all from in the 50s, from the logging days, So I had actually gone in there, cleaned it all up, fixed a lot of the erosion, put out my own weed mat barriers and stuff, because I had actually worked with the subcontractor for the state on the freeways for a little while. So I learned how to do a lot of erosion control and stuff. And I did that, and then like you just, those places were really hard, but you put out a lot to actually, it's better now than when I got there. And even Fish and Wildlife, when they came and did inspections on those farms, they were like, man, you sure did inherit a mess here. It was like, yeah, but I cleaned it all up. And they saw erosion control stuff that I did 20 years ago, and they were super nice to me. But at first they come in all heavy-handed, you're just another asshole, and then all of a sudden, then they're like, okay, this guy's just a human, and he actually did really nice here, So those practices, we try to, go as organic as we can, make sure we don't have any runoff and, into the creeks. And that was something I did on my own too. Like I actually put out metal stakes and I would pull soil tests at the bottom of all my grows just to see if there was any runoff. And every year I'd come back, nope, it's clean. And Fish and Wildlife saw that too. They're like, oh, you did that? And I was like, yeah, here, you want to see the reports from the last 4 years, And they were like, no, but that's just, thinking ahead, It was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up surfing and fishing around here. It's like, I love our creeks, So it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
and humans have an impact on the environment no matter what, no matter where you're at, you have an impact. So how to minimize that impact is what you need to learn how to do, And sometimes you'll have a little bit more of an impact on one end, but then on the other end, you just try to do something, try to compensate for it as much as you can too. But yeah, like just keeping, trying to keep things good, and on the farms, like organic and stuff like that is important to keep going like
I
that.
think cannabis needs less than we think it needs to. I
Way,
feel like the industry has turned into like so much more, love all the grow shops and thank you so much for everything you provide, but we don't need 500 bottles of every type of this, that, and the other. Like the plants don't really need that, especially when you're taking care of the land and working with what you have.
yeah, it's funny. I mean, all the fertilizers are made from the same stuff too. It's just like, all right, it's a new logo, new label, new marketing budget with a new company, and they go out of hard. And if you actually start looking at all the products, it's like, yep, they're all the same. It's just different percentages. And like we
Yeah.
use a lot of like fish emulsion and chicken shit, just really old school stuff.
Hmm.
But it works
Yeah.
great. You don't need a whole lot more.
No, no, they're simpler plants than people think.
Plus,
They're
I know
complex. Their needs are pretty simple.
Plus, I know when you see all the trees and grass and stuff doing good around it too, you're like, okay, like the environment's liking this, not disliking it. And then you see a lot of chemical sites, it's like, yeah, their pile of soil, grass won't even grow on it after they grew their wheat in it. You're like, yep, grass won't even grow on that. So it's just nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that consumers are getting smarter, but I think it's just been a very slow, painful road for them.
It's taking turn.
And I think that the consumers are getting smarter, but we're also in a stressed economy right now too. So I think that I think a lot more people than we know want to do better and would pay a little bit more for something good, but they just can't afford it. So
Totally. Oh yeah, totally.
that's what people in Humboldt don't
What
realize. Why is
what's your hope?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask what's your hope and vision for where the cannabis industry is gonna go? Like, what do you want to shift or change, or what do you want to stay the same in the next 10 years?
I think production needs to go down for one. Production needs to go down, and people need to be educated, or at least want to be educated on where their product's coming from and how the product that they're purchasing affects the environment, how it's grown. And I really hope that the shift goes that way. I do kind of see it, and I think other industries are bringing that to light too. But it's like we fall into those same categories, that people are getting more aware. It's just, but it's slow, and I don't know if the good small farmers are going to survive that transition. 'Cause it's a painful one. And I'm sure if the economy was doing really, really good, like on a upper end spike like it does, that I'm sure that we would be getting paid more for a good sun grown too. But like I said, everybody's struggling, so it's just not easy for anybody. So they need of course they'll go in and look at what they want, but then they just take the cheapest thing they can get off the shelf, It's like, yeah.
I know. I think we will. I think we're gonna be over the hump of the people just want the most bang for your buck as far as like, give me the cheapest, highest THC. I think we will get past that universe and kind of settle into quality over quantity. I hope. I do think that will happen, and I think that things like where's your cannabis coming from? Is it grown organically, though it might not have that label on it, but what does that mean, and what does it, I think I have hope that we're going to get there.
I do too. I want to survive till we do get there, and that's why we still push ahead. Is that hope that people do get educated? So
Mhm.
there's even the state of California, like they haven't supported that at all, though. It's like know where your product's coming from. Like, they don't really support that. It's interesting to me. They just come down heavy-handed on everybody. And I don't know.
It's I think it's got to be tough to be a part of something for your entire life, to be in and around this culture and to feel like such a small amount of progress has been made in such a large amount of time.
That's what it is. It's just these incremental baby steps, and it's just like, can the big like flash go off and be like, hey, this is what you're getting, and this is what it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the state hasn't supported that at all, and I actually kind of learned from this. The state of California is major. They endorse corporate big time here, and everybody thinks it's like the land of you can live how you want and it's free, and it's like I've had state officials actually brought it to my attention that they told me, they said, California is a hostile corporate state. Like big corporations love to just take over everything they can here, and there is no real protections from it. So it's like, yeah, you start to see it more as you get older. And I was actually doing a was doing a project with some UC Davis professors, and I was down there, and they had one of them had just retired and opened his own lab, so we did a lot of testing down there for a long time, and that's where I learned about heavy metals way before, like, the vape pen carts, the heavy metals in that. We were actually the company that found that. But I learned we were also working with some very big land developers down there that wanted to open up a new Sac State Food and Drug campus. And they invited me to a fundraiser one time, and they said, "Oh, it's a fundraiser for Governor Cox." And there was a guy running against Newsom when Newsom first got elected. And I'm like, I'm good on that. I'm not into politics. I don't think it's all pretty evil, honestly. And then a couple months later, I was down there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing another fundraiser." I said, "Oh, who are you doing a fundraiser for?" And he goes, "Oh, Gavin Newsom." I said, "Aren't you guys, like," I couldn't tell if they're Republican or Democrat myself. I'm like, "Are you guys Republican or Democrat?" And they're like, and the son looks over at me, and he looks at me and he goes, and there was like probably 12 to 15 people. There was supervisors at this meeting. It was a big meeting. And the son leans over. He's all, "You know what we call the governors?" I'm like, "Oh, I knew something was coming." I'm like, "Oh no, what is it?" And he goes, "We call them our fucking bitches." And I'm like, "Oh, I see the big picture of everything. This is in Sacramento too." I'm like, "I see the big picture here. Okay, I get it. This is corporate.
Got it.
You're just a pawn in your guys' scheme of the big world." I'm like, but we always kind of knew that, but just hearing it at that level, I was with Placer County supervisors, it was like really wealthy developers, and it was like, okay, I get it. Like, don't need to say anymore. It's like, yep.
Yep. That sums it up. Okay.
Yep. I was like, good. Well, like, yeah, what I always thought was really real. So there you go,
Like I said earlier, I think that you have lived an outlaw lifestyle your entire life, despite the fact that you are operating in a legal system. It's like everything, what it means to be an outlaw has changed in time. Like, your parents in your young life defied a system that didn't fit what they wanted for their family, for their life. That rebellion really carved a groove in time, and you were a part of that. You expanded that in your life, and even to where we're at now, like I said, growing organically, staying in small farms, focusing on quality over quantity in a system that almost wants you to just play capitalism and consume and demand this pricing for these things. I think that outlaw spirit has kind of is really high integrity is what that is. I think you work and operate and live in integrity, and in the world that we live in now, that is rebellion. Living a life of integrity is rebellious. And that idea is crazy, but I love the spirit of that. And I so appreciate you sharing a bit about this today. And I'm grateful for your story and for your spirit and for the incredible cannabis you grow. And I'm so glad we got to have this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, for sure. That was, I always call it people need to look at their accountability, It's like that has to do with everything you do every day. And yeah, you're not going to do it always right. And there's going to be things you have to do that go against what you would want to do to survive, but at least just push for accountability. It's like from the products you purchase at a store, or where you drive, or how much you drive, or whatever you do. Just know that you're accountable for that, and it's like, and we all make bad impacts on the environment, but just realize I'm accountable for that, And I think a lot of people don't even understand accountability at all, It's like, we all do it within ourselves a little bit more, then the whole situation will be better, So and when you make a mistake, yeah, I blew it. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that, Be accountable for it, and you'll learn and move on to do something better, and that's how you learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, micro improvements.
Yeah, a lot of people just want to blame it on somebody else. It's like, oh no, it's their fault, It's like, no, maybe it was all of our fault. Maybe it was your fault, That's up to it.
What can we do today that might change that down the line? Yeah.
Yeah, at least try. Start the day with that,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, thanks so much, Nya. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.